It's the fact that she's regressing and building up walls of memory. I've done that the last few years. I've mentioned, before we recorded here, I said how I recently, just today, got offered a job that's going to get me out of the job that I've currently got. And hopefully in a year or two, I'll be in a significantly better place for me and Jessica. But when things have hurt, you tend to regress. Jessica talks about when Jessica was upset a couple of weeks ago, she was talking about wanting to be a child again, wanting to have her mother take care of her and whatnot. And in a sense, we get a bit of that kind of feeling with the end with Julie, that Julie has done the deed. She's put her sister away, and she's at the doctor's office or whatever. I think she is visiting Dr. Baumeister, who's the head or one of the heads of the clinic, or Christie's doctor or whatnot. And she's sort of looking at the audience and just seeing out into the audience and just, pulling back within herself. So, um, uh, yeah, and I think she's an interesting character, but she's if you actually look at it, she doesn't have a lot of dramatic scenes. There aren't really any scenes of her yelling and screaming at the other sister. She doesn't have any inherently dramatic scenes, or melodramatic scenes, I should say, with Danny Wagner. But this is one of the things that I want to do with drama. Here again, we have
Well,
Beechwood
even if yeah, I was just thinking, even if you're going to concede that there are melodramatic scenes between them when they're children, it's a lot different. She does, in some ways, have feelings for Danny Wagner, at least sexually, when they're children. But if they were adults, that would be pumped up for drama.
Mhm.
Whereas it's more refreshing since they're children.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily see that portrayal in drama or really any kind of artistic world.
Well, an interesting thing too is I mentioned Chin's idea of the theater of Danny Wagner. At the end of this last play that I wrote, the 28th one so far, I'm going to call the plays that are about me the Agony of Danny Wagner plays, and then the rest of them are going to be historical plays, which I'll do in the next few years or whatnot. For example, I decided to, instead of doing 3 novels on the great Khans, I'm going to make plays out of them. I think it's more interesting that way. But now I forgot what my other point was. What did you just ask?
Well, I mentioned how it's more refreshing that the drama is played out when they're children as opposed to when they're adults. Whereas
Yeah,
the regular context, it would be far more melodramatic if they were
yeah.
adults.
And the thing too that you have to recognize is in these plays we get the meta idea of Danny Wagner. We know that he can bounce in and out of these plays, but the interesting thing is there seem to be a lot of females that have interest in Danny Wagner. Now, that's far more than in real life with me. Some of the women that I have written about, like in The Second Woman, those were real things that happened to me, basically. Those are, but something like this, there was no attraction really. I mean, I thought the older sister, the Julie character, was pretty in a tomboyish way. And she was a couple years older, so that was always for a young kid. Well, I'd like to nail the older girl, but in reality, she barely, she probably didn't even know my name by the time she hit 21. And and so is Danny somehow, what does that say about the meta aspect of Danny Wagner in that all of these plays, there always seems to be at least one female who has some unrequited interest or unenacted interest or sometimes enacted interest in Danny. So we get the idea, is Danny trying to rewrite his own history, which as Dan Schneider, to a certain degree, that's true. I mean, but I'm rewriting it for dramatic purposes. But within my drama is Danny Wagner rewriting it for his own egotistical purposes. And so that's the thing, that we get that same kind of meta thing as I had between Manny Cole and Dan Schneider in the New York Quartet. We now have a similar thing between Danny Wagner and Dan Schneider. It's not as black and white 180-degree opposition the way it is with Manny Cole, but there is that subtle tug that Dan Schneider is rewriting his past for dramatic purposes to enlighten people, but is Danny Wagner within the plays rewriting for his own selfish means, which he probably is to a certain degree, not in a black negative way, but just just in that way to sort of protect himself, much in the way that Julie protects herself with memories, I would say.
And memories seem to be the most frequent use in any of your works. And it seems to have this sort of the Amarcord Radio Days effect where you can exaggerate scenes. Thomas Evans and I were talking about this in Not Reached by the Frost. There's a scene we'll talk about later in that is ridiculous, but since it's within a memory, you can accept it.